on.
I will.
I'll introduce. Good evening and welcome to Dessert and Dish. I'm one of the co-hosts tonight, Brad Barnham, and this is the Reverend Matt Gillard. And we are delighted this evening to introduce to you Adam Mackniel. Adam is a dear friend of lots of people of this parish. I don't know him too well myself. We've met a few times, but I'm looking forward to diving into a little bit of his ministry, his experiences, his loves, his passions, and what he does, and maybe to learn a little bit about his path. Tonight we have a delicious dessert. Matt, why don't you take it away?
Tonight we've gone back to one of our favorite local desserts, Beechwood Donuts.
My favorite.
An entirely vegan donut.
All
Bet you
right.
none of some of you didn't know that when you did you know that about Beechwood?
No, I didn't, but I knew
You
they're
will not
famous
believe it.
around
These
here.
are completely vegan and they are utterly delectable. So
All right.
we'll dive into those in a little bit. But first of all, Adam, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brad. I'm really excited
what's
for
your
this.
tell me about what's your relationship to this church?
Yeah, well, I know Martha and Scott, and I know Dan from diocesan ministry. But I mean, I got started at my parish church in Hamilton, and I was cradle Anglican, born right into it, and kind of got involved in all the typical ways you would. I went to Sunday school, the youth group, that sort of thing. And then one of our youth group leader, she is involved in diocesan youth ministry. So she kind of encouraged me, rather forcefully, to get involved with diocesan ministry. So I did that, and I went to the Niagara Youth Conference and Diocesan Youth Synod and that sort of thing. That's where I got to meet all these other clergy in the diocese, and so it really opened up like a whole new world of church life. So yeah, and then I got talking to other clergy and visiting other parishes. So I came over to St. George's and visited, and yeah, really lovely, really great to be here.
And whenabouts was that?
That was probably, I think I was in like grade 10, so
Okay.
yeah, it was about like 4 or 5 years
great.
ago.
And so
Yeah.
let's talk about a little bit before grade 10. Then let's just talk about were you involved in? So you said from your birth you were involved in church, and what kind of ways might have you been involved? You know, what were you doing?
Yeah, so I think what I really started getting involved in was we had a children's choir. And it was sort of, there weren't that many to begin with, but it grew pretty fast. And I remember it was right around the time when I started to learn how to read.
Wow.
And I remember them asking me, can you read? And I was like in grade 2 or something, maybe 1.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, I think I could do this. So we didn't actually read sheet music, right?
Sure.
But it was just printed lyrics. So
Lyrics.
that sort of oriented me into that world. And yeah, and then sadly though, the children's choir kind of dwindled. And I was about 13 at that point, and then they invited me to come join the big people choir.
Big choir.
Yeah. So that was pretty serious, and I was like half the size of everybody else,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being around the adults and sort of in that more mature environment. Yeah, so it kind of took off from there. I was also doing some serving at the altar at that time. I got involved with other worship roles like reading and leading intercessions and that sort of thing.
But it was more the it was the community-based things that you were kind of digging into, you know, as a child.
Yeah.
Being introduced to something like choir, it can be huge for a kid. I mean, it's huge for anybody, and this is a perfect opportunity for me to say, come join our choir.
Yeah, there's a plug.
More on that later. But you know, it's an opportunity for people of like-minded hearts to come together to do something greater than one might do on their own. Right?
Yeah.
Did you feel that as a kid?
Well, absolutely. And you know what? It was almost like all these mini communities and the different ministries of the church, all in this one big family, this one big community, and everybody's playing their part for the greater whole. And I found deep meaning in that. And yeah, so I had like my community of servers and the community of the youth group and the community of the choir, and a lot of people were involved in different aspects and through all those different ministries. So yeah, a deep sense of community and support in all aspects of my life from those people.
With so many people involved in that, are there
Yeah.
any mentors that really stand out, and what sort of mentorship has really helped you along the way?
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, we kind of say that, you know, like at the church, I have like a lot of grandmothers. I probably have like about 50 or 60 grandmothers.
50 or 60?
Yeah, I mean, they're really, church people are wonderful, right? They want to cook you food
course. I know.
and make you coffee and tea, and that's great. And as a young person, you love that, right? At dessert. And so, yeah, I mean, like mentors, just those close personal relationships. But also the rector of the parish recently, when I was a teenager, was really influential in sort of giving me some tools and some resources to get involved. And like I said, pushed me into the diocesan world. And yeah, so it was just a lot of opportunities to get involved and get engaged and connect with new people. And so it was really fun.
And we find, as young people, the three of us, we can all agree on that we're young people.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah.
We can all agree that we find, at least I can speak for myself, but I think I speak for all of us in that we're grateful for mentorship. I mean, it is essential. It is essential, especially as we come into a community that's so, particularly for you and me, we've entered into a community that's so well positioned and it's grounded. It is a being, and I think it's really vital and important to find those mentors and people who can help guide us when we're in the unknown and we're walking into experiences that we're very vulnerable with, right? These sorts of things. Now, more than church, have you found over the years, and we're going to kind of guide the conversation a little bit, but
Sure.
Have there been other forms of mentorship in your life, like let's say music teachers and things like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? You want to
And,
speak on that?
yeah, for sure. And I mean, that was sort of different. A lot of my outside of the church mentors didn't really know too much about my church life. I guess I kind of kept that a little bit hidden because it's most of our society is secular. And so I didn't really want any of my mentors outside of the church to think of me differently because I was so heavily involved in the church.
I can relate to that. When I was going through art school, there were only a few of my art teachers that I told I was involved with the church.
Yeah.
And I think my art history teacher was one of them.
Yeah.
And again, it's because there was some connect there.
Yeah.
With lots of Christian art being looked at, and they started to wonder, how do you know so much about this?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
you're getting similar experiences with music history?
Right, yeah, and like, I don't know about your experience, but I was pretty surprised, like once I opened up to these people that, I'm a church nerd, that they were like, oh, that's really cool, I want to hear more about that. Like for instance, my piano teacher, she's amazing, and I've known her for probably about 10 years, she's been really supportive of my church initiatives. Actually, I got to play at the cathedral for Cathedral Cafe. There was an initiative a few years ago. Yeah. And she came. She came to that, and she was really supportive and thought it was super, super cool.
Who is that? Who's your teacher?
Her name's Anya. Yeah. I took lessons from the Conservatory of Music in Hamilton.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, and she's definitely not, your church type. She kind of plays in like a rock band. She's really into different things that you wouldn't typically associate with church. But no, she found it fascinating and was really supportive. So.
I wonder why we fret over being open about these sorts of things. I wonder really what it boils down to. I think about my upbringing, and I don't necessarily know if I kept it secret. I didn't keep it secret because I felt that most of my friends were already in that community. However, then you get to high school.
Yeah.
And then you start to feel like these different feelings that maybe you haven't felt before, like maybe like embarrassment or shame or crushes or pressure, these sorts of elements that you didn't really necessarily feel so much as a younger person. But then you move into this social dynamic that you're not used to, and you kind of hide some things. And maybe it's because we hide the things that are precious to us. What do you think, Matt, over there?
I think that's part of it, but another part of it, I think, is just, as you get older, things get a bit more political.
Yeah, for sure.
And like with the different cliques or social groups in schools, some of them are more accepting and some of them aren't. And
it depends on what school you went to, what kind of demographic,
Yeah,
My school was of
absolutely,
800 people, and we were all pretty friendly. It was a smallish school, very old school. not old school. It was an old building.
Right.
It wasn't an old school, but very actually not old school. It was pretty progressive, and I didn't
Nice.
really feel the need to hide these things. But what was your school? What was your high school experience
Well,
like?
you know what? As an actual school environment, they were very accepting of a diverse range of views and religions. Yeah, you know, like I think it was just for me a couple of personal encounters where I would maybe be wearing a cross or something, and then somebody challenged me and said, "Well, what do you think that's going to do?" Like, I'm kind of like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
like this is a deeper theological question that I'm unprepared for." Like, yeah, and I was like in grade 9. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I just like go to church. I don't know."
Yeah. I just
So
wanna wear it.
right, yeah, but yeah, I think it was maybe a bit of insecurity about what people would think about me if I identified as a Christian kind of publicly, and I certainly didn't want to push that down anybody's throat, right? Yeah, but you know, I was surprised. The more and more I was more open about it, the more and more people were accepting and interested.
You know, particularly as we grow, you know, I found this. So as somebody who was interested in choral music,
Yeah,
now there's a niche interest, right?
For sure.
I mean, for in church it might seem pretty. Yeah, everybody loves choral music, but in the world, choral music. You know how many times I said, you know, I'm going into choral conducting for my master's, and people go, "Pardon? What? You're going into what?
What is that?
What is choral?
Yeah, like, what's
what is
choral
conducting?
mean?
What are these two things? Like I don't know these words, right?
right. So you
and-
wave your hands in the air.
But exactly, or you wave your hands in the air, or you're just, you know, you're waving that baton around, or you have any train jokes, you know, all of us. Anyway, but what I'm trying to get at is by making those intentional decisions to narrow our paths, what we're doing really is opening up the support.
Yeah.
You know, an example is I thought that me loving choral music was this rare, tiny little thing. You know, I was like, I want to do it. Then I go to my master's, and it became my world. It became everything, and everybody was supportive of me, and everybody was thinking the same way as me. And that's what happens when you go into education, and you know, when you start to join church community, and when you start to join dioceses. So did you feel that as a young person?
Yeah, I mean, I think people notice when something brings out your authentic self, when they see that you're passionate about something and you really genuinely love it, people give respect to that. Like, there's nothing worse than like kind of going with something because you were kind of forced into that, or you kind of, I don't know, maybe it's the money, but that's not really typically the case for music.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, like people do connect with that. So yeah, and I guess that kind of brings me into my musical experiences. Like I said, I was in the church choir, and I don't know why it was, but I didn't really get involved in my high school choir. I think I was involved in the band, and I thought, okay, that's enough. I'll just stick with that and do my courses.
What high school did you go to?
Westmount.
Nice.
Yes, you're familiar with
I am. I'm familiar.
Oh, okay.
In fact, our violinist last week, do you know Jay Daly? Jay
I don't know him, no.
Okay,
but
he's from Westmount as well.
really?
Yeah.
I wonder if he was, I think he's a bit older than me,
Maybe
but yeah.
he's a bit older than
Okay.
me.
Yeah, it's great school.
Anyways,
really
wonderful
great
school.
school.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful music program too. And I remember, you know, it takes a lot to be at wind orchestra rehearsal at 7 in the morning, like 3 times a week.
Wow.
But you gotta love it to be there. So
Yes.
we did. And actually, our music teacher was really great. Every year, he would make these trips for us. We would go to different cities in the U.S. and travel and meet other composers and go on different concerts and tours and that sort of thing. So
Wow.
it wasn't just like a theory-based, like we're in the classroom learning music, but it was like, let's go out into the
Practical
world.
program.
Let's actually see this thing in action, right? And so I love that. It was really fascinating.
High school music for me was so not that. You know, I went to Burlington Central High School. Love the school, but the music program was seriously lacking. And I hope nobody is listening from Central right now. No. And I hear about all these schools. I don't know, Matt, what your experience was for music, at least, or for even just arts in general.
Yeah.
You know, we had a wonderful theater program. You know, we had a pretty good art program, but music was so lacking. And then I hear about all these programs. Like you went on tours, and you know, you played. You had wind bands. We barely had. We had like a jazz band and like a band, but it was just so just thrown together. So I can only imagine the support or the support of your peers and your teachers, leading you into this, the potential next step of pursuing a profession, right?
Yeah.
That must have been huge. What about
Yeah,
you?
for sure.
Well, my mother was a high school music teacher.
nice.
So, I mean, the music program at the high school she taught at was able to have 2.5 music teachers. So one of them was half-time, the other
Yes.
2 were full.
Yeah,
Okay.
they didn't cut her in half. I'm sorry.
No guillotine.
No.
And the music program there was, junior and senior band,
Yes.
guitar ensemble,
Okay.
choir, and there was even a rock band that
Wow.
was,
Wow.
and then they
That's pretty cool.
got a rock or a course set up for the rock band.
Yeah.
And they did musicals every other year. They
Yeah.
were doing tours down into the States in
Wow.
different
Wow,
places
yeah.
and doing lots of trips.
Nice.
So, I mean, and
Yeah.
Mom was very proud of having a very active music program,
Yeah,
Yeah.
bet she was. She should be.
and
Yeah,
proud
for
of,
sure.
getting up early in the morning to do those
Yeah.
rehearsals.
Yeah.
And also,
What school was that?
that was Clark Road. So,
Got it.
school in kind of a rougher end of town, but, very solid students, and
Good.
Mom was very proud to work there.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about
Yeah.
your education?
So I went to 2 different high schools. So South Secondary for my regular high school, and they had a pretty good music program with, jazz band, senior and junior band, and a choir. We went on a few trips as well. They also did high school musicals. And then after I did my regular high school courses, I went to Beale to do 2 years of visual art, where that's all I took all day for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And that school, along with having a fantastic art program, had a really solid music program with 3 full-time music teachers.
Wow.
They also had a guitar program along with band and choir, and they had a music theater program that was similar to the visual arts program, where students would come to Beale after doing regular high school to do 2 years of music theater.
Wow.
Wow.
So it was pretty
A
solid.
2-year,
Wow, that's
like a
pretty involved.
2-year.
It was either 1 or 2 year.
Wow.
I didn't have much to do with that, so
Beale. I think
yeah.
I think one of the music teachers at Beale I was in a vocal ensemble with.
Probably David Weaver.
Uh, Kirsten McKennis? No, maybe not. Maybe different school. I
Name's
forget all
not
the,
ringing
the
bells.
London high schools. I try
Yeah.
to keep
That
track.
high
but
school sounds familiar, actually.
Which one?
That
Yeah.
Beale, was it?
Yeah, Beale.
HB Beale.
Yeah,
Or
I
was
think
it-
I live near there.
Okay, we're
actually.
getting off of track here. Was it Steve Hollowitz?
I know that name.
I do know.
I
that.
You know
can't
that too?
remember.
Yes, he's a church musician in
He is.
London.
He's at St. James,
yes,
Westminster.
Yes, I do know. that.
And St. James Westminster, and that was where I sang at church. So
Okay,
let's
very cool.
let's just.
You
draw-
sang at
let's-
St. James Westminster.
I certainly did.
That's where I was baptized.
No kidding. Look
Yeah.
at this
I
moment.
visited there last year. Anyway, yeah, wow.
So you're experiencing a
Small
real life
world.
conversation. Now we're gonna get back to the conversation for you.
All right, back to the
So-
script.
So let's just dive back in a little bit to this high school music experience.
Yeah.
And then what made you choose to then not produce, but to choose
Pursue?
to go on to pursue, thank you,
Yeah, yeah.
music at the
Um,
post-secondary?
Well, they say like go do what you like to do, right? Don't like, I mean, like you could do what, be a doctor, be a lawyer, that sort of thing. But and a lot of people are like, why are you doing music? But genuinely, it's because I like it, right? And I'm actually going to want to excel and get good grades and do all that stuff. So yeah, that landed me at Western, mostly because they're really known as having a phenomenal music program. And I mean,
Yeah.
you went there. I know Martha went there.
That's
a lot
where
of
my
people
mom
go
went
there.
as well.
Yes,
So,
there you
and
go. Right.
Brad went there, and
Yeah, so
Martha.
really great reputation. And yeah, but then like this coronavirus,
Aye.
this thing kind of hit, right? And that sort of didn't ruin the plan, but it certainly made it a little more challenging. There were a little more
I can only
obstacles.
imagine. Ooh, I can
Yeah,
imagine.
so my first year was 2020, right? September 2020. So I had done my audition during lockdown in March 2020. And I thought, okay, this will be over by the summer.
Yes,
It'll be
of course.
fine, right? No. So we got
Not even
there.
close.
Yeah, and then I think we had mostly online classes. There were a few in person, and it was a little bit awkward. We made the most of it that we could, but
How did you do piano lessons?
so my teacher, every teacher did it differently.
Mm-hmm.
But my teacher did a bit of a mix of Zoom and in person. So I know it was like,
I
what are we
can't
doing this
imagine.
week? We don't know.
I think
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have lasted. I truly don't know if I would have. And I know a lot of
Yeah.
people didn't last through like pushing through?
People were surprisingly persistent, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there was some times where it was just like, why are we bothering? Because,
Yeah.
it's just the waves up and down
Yeah.
of lockdowns and protocols, and like it would change every week, right?
Yeah.
So, but we managed, and I think I progressed as a
Mhm.
musician, and I think a lot of people did too. So, I mean, that was the goal. As long as we get a little bit of progress and we learn a little bit about ourselves and about other people in the music world, then we're off to a good start. So,
So technically, really, you've only been in class, steadily for what, 2 months now?
yeah,
Yeah.
since September, yeah.
And so, what do you think? What's it like? What's it like
I-
being at University for Music?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, we still have some protocols, and that's important.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But it's a little more relaxed this year, and I think that's given
Yeah.
us some opportunity to actually interact and
Yeah.
get to know one another, and actually go to concerts and
Mhm.
enjoy, instead of just making music sort of isolated at the piano, is where I am.
Mhm.
But actually listen to what other people
Yeah.
have been working on.
And are you in ensemble? Any ensemble
Yes,
work?
so I'm in a choir.
Talk to us about that.
And yes, so it's the largest chorale, is the largest choir at Western, and there's 60 of us, I think. I don't know how many there were when you were
It's
there.
100.
Oh, okay, so it's
Mhm.
gone down. But
Yes, it is.
but yeah, there's about 60 to 70 of us, and
That's a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. I remember the first time that we had a rehearsal in September, like our conductor kind of teared up a little bit, because it was the first time that he was hearing
Mhm.
this big sound, right, in the practice room.
Yeah,
with the
we had
rehearsal
that
room.
experience.
I don't know
the
what
other
it's like
week.
to tear up in front of a choir at all. I have no idea.
No, you've never done? No.
Complete
Totally
sarcasm.
like
I know
not
exactly what you mean.
emotional.
It's
Music
emotional.
is so serious. There's no
Yeah,
emotion.
it's an extremely emotional experience
Yeah, it is.
to re-enter into community music like this, and so
After
being
so long.
especially
yeah.
you're at a stage right now where you're like, I want to get every opportunity I can while I'm at this pinnacle moment of my education, and I understand being back in class would be a huge experience for you.
Yeah. For
Chorale
sure.
was my first choir as well. In fact, chorale was not just my first university choir. For those who might not know this, I never did choir through high school. I never did choir through university.
Oh, neither did
or
I. Interesting.
for any of that. I just started choir straight up at university, and my first choir was chorale.
Wow.
Wow.
So that, yeah.
I mean, they say, like, I was kind of surprised, like our conductor said, well, not everybody here is actually
yeah.
experienced with
Mhm.
choirs, right? And I was kind
Mhm.
of like, well, we're at university,
During
that's
high
strange.
school,
But
what
No,
was
it's
your
true.
music experience during high school? Was it bands or?
It was a music. We had a music teacher.
Mhm.
We had a guitar teacher.
Okay.
Oh,
who,
okay.
who did nothing. And then we had a few, so our drama program was exceptional. So every
Oh,
year
yeah.
we did
Nice.
musicals, I was in them all the time.
Oh, wow.
The star of the show, no.
What musicals did you
Yeah,
do?
we did Grease, and we did
Oh, nice.
Man of La Mancha, and we did Pippin, and
Oh.
we did Back in the 80s, which was this fun show. Anyways, music was all about supporting the drama program.
Ah.
Hmm.
And so music was classes, and then jazz band, which was a joke. But
Oh, no.
the whole idea for me was going to university was the first time I was going to really get into music program,
For sure.
because high school was not that. I
Hmm.
learned all my music on my own with my own teachers. But
Hmm.
for you went from a program, and then you went to nothing. You went to
Yeah.
classes like
Right.
online for.
Right. Yep.
And so being back is probably huge.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, totally different. Like at the beginning of COVID, we were just listening to one person at a time on Zoom singing.
Mhm.
That's how we
Wow.
learned our parts. And then we
Wow.
were just crossing our fingers that towards the end of the semester, we might be able to have a in-person
Wow.
recording session or
Yeah.
something like that,
Mhm.
which we did actually. It was pretty remarkable. But yeah, so it was sort of very, not very stable. But this year, there's a lot more security and certainty about, I hope, about what we're looking at in the future. So
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Before we move to our final conversation,
yeah.
one more little beautiful tidbit is that chorale was also the very first choir I ever conducted. So that's kind
Oh,
of a neat moment
wow.
as well. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So the
Good to-
professor that used to be there was my mentor, who's friends with Martha, and so it's just nice
Nice.
to hear somebody talking about
Yeah.
these classrooms and these people and these
Yeah.
these ensembles that I once was a part of as well. So it's
Nice.
nice to hear
Yeah.
these from you.
For sure.
So let's just talk a little bit about these next steps. So
Mhm.
you've spoken about your heavily involved nature of being at church,
Yeah.
and you've talked a lot about your very active musical life. Where do they meet in the middle? Where do they meet? What's your call? Where do you feel you're going to be next, or where do you want
Yeah.
to go?
Well, so far I found myself in a bunch of churches on the organ bench or at the piano bench offering some music on different Sundays, both during COVID and before and still now. But for a while now, I've been thinking a lot about maybe I should go to the pulpit, which is like a scary, intimidating, daunting thing. But I've been feeling that call for some time now. And again, it goes back to those mentors, right? In the diocese, I mean, clergy and lay people, right? People who are really investing their time and energy into caring for you and nurturing your faith. That's been huge. So, yeah, so I'm still considering all that and thinking maybe after a music degree I would go study theology. But yeah, I'm looking
That's
to that.
interesting. That you say, first of all, it's daunting, and I just want to know a little bit more about why you think it's daunting. Not that I don't necessarily agree. I want to know what you mean. Where does that come from?
Well, so my parish priest, when I was a teenager, kind of let me shadow him a little bit, right? I was a fly on the wall for a lot of different things in the church. So, for instance, I would go and visit people in hospital with him.
Wow.
I would, what else? A bunch of other things around the church, right? Just fundraisers and different things. So I got to see a lot of how sometimes chaotic that role can be and sometimes how demanding it can be. But I also got to see how rewarding it can be and how there's a lot of joy that comes from that too, right? So that really intrigued me. And so, yeah, now the thing with COVID, though, too, is that hasn't been there as much because we've had to be distanced. So, I mean, the challenges are all the more apparent now, right?
For sure they are.
That we're kind of ministering in a challenging climate, I think. So, yeah, I'm working with that, and I'm looking for more opportunities for ministry in London and when I'm back in Hamilton and in our diocese. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to more opportunities coming up. But music is always great as well.
And looking for opportunities in London, have you gravitated to any church in particular?
Yeah,
or a few?
so the cathedral is always exhilarating, right?
Okay.
What a beautiful place.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the organ at the cathedral, Ian Sadler, I don't know if you know him, he's the organist
Yeah, I
there.
know Ian
Yeah.
Sandler.
You
Wait,
know him? Yeah.
Yes, of
I
course
think
I
he was
do.
in Toronto.
Yes, I know
He's
Ian
at St.
Sandler.
James.
Yes. In fact, I just was in correspondence with him about our Requiem. But moving
Oh,
on.
nice.
Yes,
Nice. Yeah. So, yeah, it's really fun to go there. And I've actually got to meet with the rector there, and we went for coffee and chatted. And
Lovely, good for you.
Yeah. So he was the one that really reached out and was like, oh, a young person in church. What's going on?
Would that be the dean, Paul Millward?
No, actually, it's the vicar. It's
Michael Decay.
Michael Decay.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
you know him.
I do. I did
Okay.
a student placement at the
Okay,
cathedral,
nice. Yeah.
and both very fantastic people. And
Yeah.
Michael Decay came to the priesthood after a career in teaching.
That was really interesting.
Wow.
He shared that with me. Yeah.
And I saw him do a number of Christian ed programs and some other stuff around the cathedral, and just a fantastic
Yeah.
priest.
Well, I mean, like he was telling me too that it's important that a lot of the clergy have a variety of gifts that they're bringing to ministry.
Yep.
It's like a musical background, an art background, a teaching background, right? Because all of those things come together. So that was relieving to hear.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, that could be some way useful.
Yeah, it's also musically speaking, we used to do. This is St. Paul's what we're talking about.
St. Paul's Cathedral?
Yes.
Yes.
Paul's
Yeah, Richmond.
And then what's the Catholic cathedral called?
St. Peter's Basilica.
Peter's Basilica. That's right.
Yep.
Having conducted and sung in both, there is a great sense of majesty in those places.
Yeah.
There is.
Unfathomably beautiful, and it calls for this sense of community. Like it's such a big room that you want to fill it. You know what I mean? That sense of longing to fill a space with like-minded souls. You know?
And there's definitely like when I walked into the St. Paul's, there's definitely a connection to like all of the generations of people in years past that have been there, and how sort of this call through that connectedness to those people that we need to keep going. We need to pursue what we're called to. So, yeah.
Well, Adam,
Exciting.
this has been a wonderful conversation, and I
Thank you.
hope to,
Thanks.
witness your development as I develop and as Matt develops.
Yeah,
It's
awesome.
we're all at that. We're all building on our own paths here, and it
For
seems
sure.
as though you're making the right decisions
I hope so.
in looking out for opportunity and for reaching out to people in the way that you are open to anything, in the way that you look out for chances to, like you said, you had a chat, you had a nice coffee with the vicar at the cathedral. These are opportunities that not everybody looks for. And speaking as somebody who did look for those and do look for those myself,
Yeah.
there is no better choice than to be bold and to reach out with open arms to what is coming your way. And so it
Yeah.
just seems as though you have a life of goodness ahead, and it's going to be wonderful to witness whatever is on your path.
Thank you so much. It's so great to visit St. George's. There's always so many
And
good
you're
things
always
happening
welcome. And if you ever want to come and sing and or play,
Oh.
we'll be in touch.
Oh, okay.
Might
I'm
even be able
always
to get
down
you on
for
the
that.
preaching roster.
Oh,
if you
gosh.
want.
Hey, there we have it.
Talk about
Looking forward to having
busyness.
you as a colleague, whether it's
Ooh.
Yes.
as another music
Yeah.
director or as another priest.
I would love to come
Absolutely.
make music and
And all
make
of those
noise.
things. Thank you for being
Awesome.
with us tonight, everybody. As always, we're happy to be here and hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care.
All right.
Yay.
Just perfect.
Thanks.